Guys, welcome back to the baseball podcast. We're here with Jeff Duda. Jeff, listen, there's people out there who are hungry for a little information on who you are and what you do. So why don't you satiate them? Why don't you help them out?
All right. I'm not sure who was hungry about that, but no, I think for me, I would say like because international baseball is so niche, it's so
Mhm.
small relatively compared to other sports. Like there's not very many people that have much knowledge on it, and you know, I think MLB doesn't really do a great job of like promoting it.
They
But
That is
sure
the
don't.
understatement of the year, my friend.
yeah, that's very much like there's so many tournaments going on that like no one has a clue are even happening. So I've been watching international baseball since probably the 2000 Olympics.
Whoa.
And so I remember vividly watching that, and I'm trying to remember who that was. That was Ben Sheets, right? Yeah, he pitched
Yeah.
uh,
Ooh.
a gold medal, and I remember watching that on TV, and I was just like, okay, this is awesome. And and then that's really and then it was like kind of years where there's not really much going on. And then WBC came in 2006, and I was super excited for that. And like I watched like international hockey, international basketball. So international sports is like kind of like my favorite kind of area. So I've watched like every WBC game qualifier, So I love it, and I kind of was thinking, I was like, people were really hyped during like the 2023 WBC, but it was like no one knew who any of these players were. A lot of times, like the Czech Republic, like no one had a clue about any of these players, and like they play in tournaments and they never get promoted in these tournaments. Like no, they never see any highlights, or it's like, or if you do, you don't know what's happening until weeks after it's already done. And I was just like, no one's really talking about this, so why don't I just do it? And so, I mean, I watched every like and low level tournament you can think of. Like I watched like the Caribbean Baseball Cup. I watched like the European Championship. I watched like the Caribbean and Central American games, Pan American games. And it's like you watch these tournaments, and then later on in the qualifiers, all these players who are playing in these tournaments are playing in the qualifiers. So I'm
Mhm.
like, I've already seen all these dudes play. So I know who they are. So it's not really any surprise when they get announced. But I just was like, there's so little promotion behind international baseball, so little focus, that if I could step into that area and just kind of like give it a greater platform and slowly grow it. So eventually, I think MLB does things where they only promote something if someone else has already promoted it and there's already interest behind it. They don't want to grow the interest like from the bottom level up. So like I'll see like in the qualifiers when announcing the rosters, they don't give you no deadline for when the roster's coming out. No, you have no idea when it's going to happen, and they just did like a little like afternoon news drop and drop the rosters without any warning. So if you weren't like on social media, you may not see it for hours later.
Yeah.
So I was like, so it's I'm just looking at just a little promotion of it, and I'm like, I can do that. And it's surprising me to like I don't post for interactions really. I just go here. This is something that might interest you, and if a couple people get more interested in it, I call that a success. I'm not really expecting, a whole bunch of interactions and people liking and replying to it. I'm just like, I'm just gonna put it out there, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, then you don't. But it's been surprising how much positive feedback I've got from it, and how many people are like, I've had people like, I was doing the Caribbean Baseball Cup. I had people from like the U.S. Virgin Islands who are sending me messages saying, thanks for posting highlights. We never get to see this team play. And I've had like, I know there was like a college player. His mom sent me like a direct message and was like, thanks for showing him and posting highlights, because we never see he ever get posted for stuff. So I was like, oh, that's cool.
That's
But
something my mom would do.
I'm not really doing it for that reason, but it's also just greater exposure for just international baseball on the whole. So that's fun for me, and it's just I like it, and I like sharing what I like with the rest of the world, and like especially lately. I'm not sure with the qualifiers. I just got like a ton of more people following out of nowhere and like just crazy interactions. And then it actually got me like a job with World Baseball Network because of it. So that's kind of a nice side benefit, but it wasn't like my initial like reason for doing it, you know. But it's been fun, and I think it's just like when I look at like the social media that's run by WBC and MLB for it, you notice they'll show you highlights during the games, but in between the games, they don't talk about it at all.
Yeah.
They don't, and I'm doing a thing right now where I'm just kind of like with a year out, I'm just like, looking back at like prior WBCs and the best games, the best moments, just kind of build that interest and people like looking forward to it even more rather than just it's just being dead silent. And you're seeing now like players are committing a year early, which never used to happen. It'd be like no one in the media would ever ask a player, "Oh, hey, are you going to play?" Especially like someone asking Mike Trout. Never see an American player ever asked early. It would always be they would be around the All-Star break maybe, or a little later they might see a commit, but you don't have like a year early where it's just like, hey, are you going to play in this event? Because like it's kind of a big deal. And so
you would get like the most tepid commitment ever. Like, yeah, I have some interest in playing the World Baseball.
Yeah, like we'll have to see where we're at in the spring, but I would enjoy it. Like
yeah, Mike, I was like, no one's even talked to me yet, but I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, that's good, but it's and I always found like MLB Network, like I have a huge problem with how they promote it because they bring on John Morosi, but they treat him like it's a sideshow act. They're just like, oh well, they don't do any research, and they're like, oh well, this WBC thing or whatever.
They bring it up like that, like they happen to have somebody express an interest in like woodworking, and they pulled it out, and they were like, "This isn't your job, but you happen to be interested in it, so enlighten me a little bit."
Yeah, that's basically
you know what I mean.
And it's almost like I'm just like I feel like for a lot of people, John Morosi like really introduced like how fun the WBC is because he's like really excited about it and it's just fun. It's almost like kind of like a little kid that's really excited about something, and it's just really like organic and just something he really loves. But I mean, for the longest, it was always just like, oh, this doesn't matter. This is important. This is an exhibition. Yada yada. And then now that it continues to grow, it's just like, oh no, we have to actually like take an interest in it. It's terrible.
And teams like begrudge letting their players play. It's a lot of teams, not all.
Yeah. I know there's a few teams that like in the qualifiers would like they were letting like MLB players on their roster go if they wanted to.
Yeah.
And that was very not the norm. Most teams are just like, oh hell no, you're not going.
Right.
Yeah, we were talking at the time about how Edwin Diaz got hurt in the World Baseball Classic, and we were like, yeah, you're going to see some teams be a little more reluctant next time around because that hurt the Mets pretty badly.
I'm just like, I don't know. It's very funny that like they like people don't want him to play, but he got hurt not even doing anything baseball related. Like it's just like
got hurt celebrating,
yeah,
right?
It would be one thing if it was like a dirty play or something, and people were like, "Well, it's just an exhibition. They're taking it too seriously and getting hurt." Like it would still be stupid, but I would like be willing to like listen to that, I guess. But it's like, oh no, he jumped celebrating. Like, what if he watched a game on TV and jumped celebrate? Like that could happen literally anywhere.
Right.
It was so dumb.
It was the most freak injury I've ever seen. Like I've never.
And the thing that is annoying too is like, oh yeah, because guys never get hurt in spring training. Like if you're keeping them out of the World Baseball Classic, you're keeping them with you to play in the spring. Like people, Eric Cole just had Tommy John. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
Matt Strom's starting the season on the DL because it's like, oh, Matt Strom's shoulder is still not healed, and I think they've still been throwing him in spring training. Like, stuff happens.
About the injuries is still, I think, I'm pretty sure that of all the pitchers that pitch in the U.S., I don't think a single player has like an arm injury or surgery since he's pitched 2 years ago. Like almost all of them are healthy and haven't had any issues since. I just feel like it's just very like the pitchers, their arms can just explode randomly,
Yeah.
especially if they're pumping like mid to upper 90s. Like it's gonna happen more than
Yeah,
well.
that's kind of the way of things right now, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
it's interesting that you bring it up because I've been feeling very nostalgic lately, and I'm a big Phillies fan. And I just started putting on like '08 Phillies games and just enjoying like it's like a time capsule, you know what I mean? And so I put one on last night and I was like, getting ready for bed or whatever. And my wife comes over and she doesn't really like baseball. And so she starts, she sits down, she starts talking about it with me. And she was like, "Is that a lot different?" I was like, "Oh, it's way different watching a game from 2008 versus now. Just like the things they talk about are different." And what I pointed out was I was like, the biggest difference to me just turning on the TV was there's no pitch count on the scoreboard. And now that's like the first thing that everybody looks at. You know what I mean? Like you
Mm.
turn on the game in the fourth, if he's at like 60 pitches or versus 80 pitches versus 40, it's a huge difference. And that like stuck out to me. And like that was just kind of a sign of like, and so she was asking me why, and I was like, because teams don't want their guys to throw too many pitches because every pitcher is just a time bomb. He's just going to explode at some point. And the
yeah,
only way the teams have like reliably stopped that from happening is just by not letting him pitch. It's not nobody's
Reliably,
yeah, like no,
yeah,
like I guess like okay, if you're
quote
a
unquote.
knuckleballer, you'll avoid injuries, fine. But like nobody's realized like yet have how to be like you can pitch more, just do it this way, so your arm's better. It's literally just pitch less.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
That's the problem. WBC
In
runs.
2008, like Jamie Moyer, it's one of the best pitchers on the Phillies team, right? And this
That's
dude
the
was
game that I was watching was a Jamie Moyer game.
maybe 83 miles per hour at
Yeah.
most at that point. He was
Yeah, that
no,
was when he was reaching back.
yeah, yeah, that's like it really is like I remember like sometimes I'll watch like early 2000s games on like YouTube or something, and and just the way they talk about the game is so different. Like you never hear like, at least I don't, like obsessing over players' strikeouts, or you don't have like constant mentions. They never talk about sabermetrics ever on the
Yeah.
broadcast. They never.
They like barely existed back then.
Yeah, it
And
was.
and one of the things I thought was super funny too was I put on a Sunday night baseball game. So it was John Miller and Joe Morgan. And I know that Joe Morgan is like the guy for like out of touch, like boomer kind of baseball mentality.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess he was, he's dead now. But it was really funny that I put on like a random like August Phillies Padres game, and the Padres were terrible. They're like 40 and 60 or something. And the first thing that Joe Morgan started complaining about was like, oh, the Padres, went to the postseason last year. They're a pretty good team, but they don't have enough speed. I was like, that's the problem. That's the
yeah,
problem. They don't have enough speed.
Yeah, if all of their guys just ran more wind sprints in spring training, they'd be 60 and 40 instead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like if you take Josh Bard and just make him fast, then he's a really good player. Like that's not the way it works.
Mm.
Something else I really noticed is even back then, broadcasters talked more about how much they love the game and how fun players are. They weren't complaining constantly about how much they hate the game and how much it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
John hates every aspect of baseball. Like
Yeah, what is that?
yeah, he's just like, yo, it was better when I play, yada yada yada. These guys, they have too many strikeouts.
I
Yada,
think the biggest culprit of that, though, because John Smoltz is a guy from a different era. Like he was really good in the '90s, and like baseball was a lot different in the '90s. So I could like it's different now for for good reasons for the most part. Like I'm not saying he's right, but I do understand why a guy who like came up in that culture would not love all the changes. But A-Rod, like you hit 96 home runs, like
Yeah.
and A-Rod was incredible. You know what I mean? He didn't sell out for power, but like A-Rod talking about how people need to be bunting and choking up on the bat is like a bridge too far. Like John Smoltz can complain about things, A-Rod cannot be telling people not to hit for power.
right. His
Yeah,
whole thing,
A-Rod telling people to swing down on the ball. It's like, Chief, come on, man. Like, you
He's-
didn't hit 696 homers swinging down on the ball.
Yeah.
his intent is to make players worse than him, so he can say he's better than them forever. So like, that's the whole thing. Like
You know what? Yeah, maybe.
you do the exact opposite of what I did to have a Hall of Fame caliber career, and then when you're not as good as me, I will criticize you for not being as good as me.
Mm.
I mean, really, even think about it, it's kind of like big brain energy he's got going on.
I was gonna say
True.
his master plan is working to perfection.
Yeah, finally we have a true galaxy brain in the broadcast booth on national TV.
All right, so Jeff, let's jump into the most recent qualifiers that just happened. The Tucson pool and the Taipei pool are both over with. Do you have any initial thoughts or things that surprised you? Like, what do you think is the most important thing you want to talk about out of the gate?
Nothing really surprised me. I mean, all four teams that I had originally picked to advance did. I think what kind of, I guess, surprised me a little bit was they didn't advance, but I thought Germany offensively was really much better than I expected. Like, I was really concerned that they were going to do anything offensively because it was just not a team built for that. But it was just like every game, just grinding at bats, long at bats. They weren't. It wasn't a lot of swing and miss. It was a lot of just they made pitchers work. And I felt like they got really unlucky in that last game against Brazil. They were just hitting seeds and missiles all over the place, and they were getting caught. And Brazil is hitting tappers past the mound, choppers up the middle. They're getting
Bunting.
falling down the line. I was just like, if I was Germany, I'd have been like, I don't think it's meant to be. Like, this is.
Yeah, Tom and I watched the first game of the pool together. So I think it was
Brazil, Colombia.
Brazil, Colombia. Which
Yeah, I had a lot of choice words for Brazil.
Yeah, and like I felt exactly the same way as you're describing when I watched Brazil, Germany. Like, I thought Brazil was kind of just a bad baseball team. Like, not like completely, like not that every single player was bad, but I watched that game and I was like, I think Germany's the better team, and this just happens sometimes when it's like a one game elimination, basically.
Yeah. I think when you watch them play, it just felt like Germany defensively is what killed them. Like, that was bad. Like, it was just guys taking bad routes. There was one play like Eric Brank, he just has to bend down for a ground ball at third, and he just doesn't bend down, and it goes underneath his glove. It was just, and then they had a wild pitch where the catcher, Vincent Arons, did a really poor job blocking it, and it led to a run. And it was just kind of, they beat themselves type deal where I thought they were better. They were better, like, in a hypothetical scenario, but just in that game, they just beat themselves with mistakes. And Brazil didn't beat themselves. They made enough defensive plays, and they weren't kicking it all over the field. And, sometimes in baseball, you get lucky, and you get some balls that fall in, you get infield choppers that aren't caught. And because it was like Dante Bichette Jr. in that game, he probably had his expected batting average on his 3 hits probably below 100, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, they were not hit hard even remotely. I'd be surprised if any of them had an exit velocity of greater than 70 miles per hour. Like, they were just weak hits that are falling, and then sometimes you get lucky, and that's just the way it goes. And I think that's what makes kind of the WBC interesting and fun, is like, you don't have to be the best team at all. Like, you don't have to be a team filled with talent. You just need on that particular night to just catch some breaks, pitch well, and hope and play really good defense, and you have a chance to win. I posted a highlight of the Netherlands, Dominican Republic in 2009. Honestly, craziest upset I can ever remember in baseball, because the talent level was so stark, so huge. But if you're a little cold offensively, and you don't get balls to fall, and and the other team gets a couple bloopers to fall in, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, we just lost to a team that we should never lose to in a million years.
Yeah.
It's not like other sports where you can just overwhelm teams with talent. And it's like, you would never see like France, get bounced by Iceland and just get overwhelmingly outplayed. You would just be like, what is happening? So that's one thing I love about baseball, but also it just if you're a fan of that team, just fills you with anxiety, because there's a pretty decent chance that you could play well and it may not show up. It may just be okay, we lost, and that's embarrassing, and I'm not sure how it happened, but it happened. So not much you can do. So I feel like Brazil and Germany, it was such a toss-up that I just felt like whoever caught a few breaks and didn't beat themselves was going to win, and that's kind of exactly what happened. And that's not a knock on Brazil, but I mean, they are what they are. They have limitations, and they maximize themselves, and they got there. but I know Germany's gonna make a kick of themselves until they get to play in qualifiers again, because I did feel like they were the second best team in the pool, and it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah, I think I didn't watch. I really only watched the one Colombia versus Brazil game in this pool. I watched a little bit of some of the other ones. Something that I've noticed watching qualifiers, which you don't really see this elsewhere, other than like some of the lower level games in the tournament. You start to see this version of baseball appear that like there are people who pretend this exists at the major league level and it really doesn't. But like you'll see people talk about small ball, like put pressure on the defense, make them make the plays. And like at the major league level, what that really means is have good starting pitching so you can score 2 runs and win the game. But like in a tournament like this, like you are going to have teams that have enough holes in their defense that if you put pressure on them constantly, they will fall apart. And it sounds like that's what happened with Germany. And the game that we watched with Brazil, that's kind of what happened with Brazil. The Colombians didn't really play that great offensively, but Brazil kind of gave away a bunch of runs. Like Gio Urshela hit a triple that probably should have been caught like 100% of the time.
Yeah,
it just sort of like lofted one down the right field line, and it was Manny Ramirez's kid Lucas. It took like the weirdest route to it, and then he like pulled up like he had it, but he didn't, and he kept running after that, and he came up short. And I was like, dude, if he just played that right, that's like a can of corn out.
Yeah.
And then it
happened though is Brazil didn't play any exhibition games, and they just came to Tucson immediately and played in the qualifier. And Tucson, the wind is crazy, right? So if you're not used to the wind, all of a sudden you saw with Germany too, even though they had played a little bit before, is they start drifting and the route they just start getting lost, and the ball keeps blowing and blowing, and then it's just like, okay, this looks like a complete disaster waiting to happen. Like when Brazil dropped like a can of corn in left field, because their left fielder was just kind of drifting and floating, and also these teams were putting catchers in the outfield. I'm like, what are we doing? Like,
yeah, I did notice. You could tell that the major league outfielders really, and even like the guys who just have minors experience, really weren't having any difficulty with it out there. Mostly like the Colombian guys. The guys on Brazil kind of were all like they none of them looked comfortable on those fly balls out there. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was the wind was affecting them a little bit.
Yeah, for me, like I think kind of like along the point you're saying is this is what I always feel for these type of events. When you see major league players and non-major league players, you don't even have to know anything about the players or who they are. You can spot it immediately, because like you see like Gio Urshela, he can just make like just a line drive like 100 some off the bat at third. He just makes a quick snag, like it's whatever. And you see other guys, they're hitting choppers and it's bobbled and they're having trouble picking it up. And it's like you just look and you're just like, yeah, there's a reason why these best players in the world, okay? Because they make the difficult plays look like it's insanely easy.
Yeah, the hilarious part is that like Gio Urshela is not even like a particularly gifted defender at the major league level. He's just a major league baseball player. Like it's not like, if Nolan Arenado was out there, you'd be like, well, yeah, that's what Nolan Arenado does. But when it's Gio Urshela, you're like, oh, this is the difference between a major league third baseman and any other league third baseman, huh?
Yeah, I think it's like I think in MPB they're pretty close to MLB level. Like but those two leagues are just like overwhelmingly better than the rest of the world combined. Like it's insane. Like you could just like, I think there was like some plays for the German shortstop Alex Schmidt where he made like MLB caliber plays defensively, but then the next game all of a sudden he's not making routine picks at short. It's like I think it's just being able to do it day after day after day, and like where like they can play at that level that's just consistently so much higher than the rest of the world, and you get in these qualifiers and teams just start putting it in play, and it's just like, oh, okay, I see why he's not in Major League Baseball. Okay, never mind. Okay,
yeah,
I can see what's going on here. Like if teams who bunt a ton in Major League Baseball, like 90% of the time, it's not going to work out in your favor because it's just going to be automatic outs. You're not going to get third basemen chucking the ball down the right field line. Like in the Taiwan qualifier, like Spain lost the final game against Taiwan mostly because their third baseman was having a meltdown at third base. Like he couldn't throw it across the diamond. And that's something like you're not going to see that from Major League Baseball third baseman where he just can't make the throw. Like he's just like, like it's if they make an error, it might be where he has to catch it down the line and is making a long throw. It's not like a routine bunt to third and he's launching it 10 feet over the first baseman's head.
Yeah, when you see games like that, like Alec Boehm had a game a couple of years back where he went out there and was butchering the ball all night. And it's like, it's really notable when that happens in a major league game. And like, yeah, when it's like a college game or whatever, or like a winter league game, like, yeah, you're going to see more of that because, these guys are not major league defenders. Alec Boehm and another guy, not a gifted glove at third base by any means, but making 3-4 errors in one game is still kind of like, yeah, he's having a bad night.
Yeah,
that's definitely not the typical Alec Boehm experience.
If you see an MLB player who has 3 errors in one night, it's going to be like one of the main highlights of the night for Major League Baseball. It's just like, okay, this dude had a horrific night. But you see it in like a lower level. It's just like, he had 25 errors this season, whatever.
Yeah, he was one of the better defenders in the league. Right. He had 37 errors at second base.
Right.
Yeah. So he only had 37 errors at second base.
So this sort of leads into a question that I want to ask you, because Colombia was worlds better. Like they probably didn't belong in the qualifiers. You know what I mean? Like they were clearly a WBC caliber team. And then Brazil and Germany were definitely flawed teams, but it was entertaining. You know what I mean? Like they were playing decent baseball some of the time. Team China is just not a better baseball team.
I'm just gonna say it.
And my question.
Okay, go ahead. Ask your question.
Well, just because I've been crusading for a long time that the China experiment needs to end. And I do want to be fair and say I didn't think China on the whole was completely inept. Like I thought their catcher was kind of impressive, like when he was fielding and stuff. But like I think it was pretty clear that Team China was not only the worst team in that qualifier, they would have been the worst team in the other qualifier too. Like South Africa was a bad baseball team, and China was like worlds worse than them.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty clear now that they've booted teams from the qualifiers to keep China in because it's a market they want to get into. And it's like at a certain point, just put the Philippines back in that spot, or like Argentina was fine, something like China needs to be done.
Yeah, I think for me, I understand why they couldn't have booted China because they were just in the World Baseball Classic. So it's just like if you relegate them and then you drop them all the way out, like it'll just cause like just kind of mayhem in the whole process. But my thing is, I don't think they booted teams necessarily for China. I think they booted teams for Brazil because Brazil is a market they want in a big way because Brazil is a massive country with massive interest in sports, So I think they want Brazil to happen, and they just announced like an MLB academy in Brazil. Like that's a place they want to go, and I think they wanted to create a greater chance for Brazil to make the main tournament because they see that as big potential, like just windfall of money. So I think it was more Brazil than China, but I didn't like the entire process because I talked to federations about it, and they weren't talking to them at all. They were giving no updates. They weren't. And it was like, I talked to France and they said, oh, we don't find out until right before they announce it. Terrible business, by the way. And
crazy.
And then they just didn't tell them anything. And then there was basically last minute, like, oh, by the way, you're not in. And it's kind of like, for me, if you're going to include the Chinas and the South Africas, who would be inferior talent wise to a lot of qualifier teams, you can't not invite than other teams because you're making it almost seem as if your decisions are all business related. There's none.
Right.
It's all about where you want to market, which is it just makes the qualifiers don't seem as important because it's like, if you're France or Argentina, like Argentina lost to Nicaragua by 1 run. and Nicaragua went to WBC. Like, you can't say, oh, well, you were really competitive with this team, but you're not good enough now. And they just won the South American Championship. Like, they are a continental champion, and a team they beat is the team that got a spot over them. Like, to me, that's mind numbing. Like, I'm just like, what are you doing? And
it's egregious. And like what bothers me the most about it is I don't have a problem with MLB trying to get China involved in a vacuum, like by itself. That's fine.
Yeah, on paper it makes sense.
But the problem is you shrunk the qualifiers for, by the way, no reason that I know of. You can enlighten me if you know a reason. But they shrunk the qualifiers, so now there's only 4 teams in each pool, and that's like a precious commodity, I feel like. Like France is like sort of coming up in the world a little bit in Europe. And, Argentina like put on a great show and they're like coming up in the world. But like we'll boot them. They have zero opportunity to get into the World Baseball Classic because we think we can make money in China. So it's like if you want to do like 8-team pools and just have China be a punching bag at the bottom, I'm fine with that. And then if they make a run, they make a run. But like you can't be booting teams that actually are showing like a capable baseball program where you could like maybe get something off the ground a little bit at least at the expense of China, which is like doing nothing for you, and you're just hoping and praying that somebody will watch it and want to spend money, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things when you watch China before they made this kind of big investment in, MLB China camp. China was better before that. Like they were more competitive against like Japan. Like there was games in the early WBC. I think they lost in 2009 4-0 to Japan. Like that's pretty competitive, all things considered, in Tokyo. And now they're getting drilled by Brazil.
Didn't they get run ruled in every game?
Yeah, they against Colombia they didn't somehow.
Colombia led up.
Yeah, I think it was 8-1, but it was China in the last I think they scored 4 total runs, I want to say, and they got run ruled twice, or it was 5 runs, but run ruled twice. It was like they were the only team in either qualifier that got run ruled and did it twice. And I looked it up. They were, I think, one of 4 teams to ever be run ruled twice in the same qualifier. So they had one of the worst performances ever of any qualifier team. And this is when they had Pakistan and a Thailand who have played in the qualifiers before. So it's.
Oh, that was Johnny Damon, wasn't it?
He was on that Thailand. Yeah.
I forgot about that.
For qualifiers,
it's like you get like when New Zealand used to put a team in and stuff, and even they did better than that.
Well, like New Zealand actually has like a functional baseball program. They're not really any good, but like they had a team in the ABL. They have guys playing in the minor leagues and stuff. Like
I think if New Zealand was in, honestly, they would have beaten China pretty handily this time. I think
I can't think of a team that wouldn't have, like maybe like okay if if like Benin has a team, like all right, maybe not. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure
Togo gets in there.
I'm
Dude,
sure
I think I've played
like
for teams in like men's leagues that could have beaten China. Like
it's great, and like we had this guy named Pepe Munoz on our show, who's involved with the Philippines Federation, and he was telling us because the Philippines was on the schedule for the 2021 qualifiers to be held in 2020, and like Tim Tebow was going to play. It was going to be a whole thing. I think Chase Darno, they had some big leaguers and stuff, and then the coronavirus happened and the tournament got scuttled. And then in 2023 rolls around and they do the qualifiers all over again. And they put Argentina in and they boot the Philippines. And I was like, oh, why was that? Did you guys like not come up with enough money to travel or something? And he was like, I have no idea. He was like, we just got an email that was like, you're no longer invited. I was like, this is crazy. It's unbelievable. And like how, like I know none of us are finance guys, but like Jeff, how much money can it possibly cost to run a qualifier? From MLB's perspective. Like
I think you have to pay. I assume they give financial assistance to teams if need be, but if you're hosting it in a ballpark in the like spring training or minor league ballpark or whatever, it's not really going to cost too much. And and plus you look at they were charging obscene prices for Taiwan to host the qualifier, so they were making a massive profit with the qualifier, and so I don't buy for even a second that they would struggle financially with this move, because they were, I think there was 2,000 average attendance, 2,000 people in Tucson was what they were shooting for, and that they would get a profit, and they got it. So I'm like, I struggle to see what was the kind of the end game, because if you look at, we got to include, the Chinas and South Africa. They're not bringing people to the games. Like, they're not
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
not like you were like, we need these teams in so we can get the profit. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, you could have easily you would have brought every team back from the previous qualifiers, and then you could have had, the Philippines. You could have had France, not France. France would have been there, but you could have the Philippines. You brought in. You could bring in all these other teams. Like, look, reward teams. Like, hey, you guys are making big strides with your national program. We know you may not qualify, but we're going to give you a shot. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, you get exposure. And, I think France could have came in and been very competitive. Like, they have made huge strides. Ernesto Martinez Jr. would have been on the team. And he's a virtual near major league caliber hitter. Like, he would have been outside of Colombia, best hitter in that qualifier if he was playing in there. So it was like, you got to actually put in the work to get the results you want. And and also what I heard was MLB was upset that their account wasn't getting promoted on social media more for the qualifiers because they need the promotion. I was like, you guys don't put in any effort to promote.
Hey, dummy, you're not tweeting anything.
Yeah, what is there to promote?
Dude, I solved this problem like 2 years ago when I said, if I'm in charge of MLB marketing, I'm literally calling Sean Spradling and saying like, hey man, I'll offer you 75 grand a year to just do this all day, every day. And he would jump at the chance.
Yeah.
Like, that's you're done. That's it.
If they send me a message and we're like, can you run our social media? I'd be like, yes. Like, like, this is easy.
Yeah.
Like, you can kind of, like, it's international baseball is something people are starving for. And like, I have people who literally are asking me for links to watch random leagues around the world. And I'm like, it's such an easy market to do. But when you're a league that's so focused on your own stuff, like when they were hyping up a spring training game over a final of a qualifier game, I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
at the very least, how about both?
Yeah, right. It's like, oh, Roki Sasaki, like, I'm like, great, he's gonna pitch 2 innings,
right?
Bad hitting. And what happens when he leaves the game? You're gonna have some guy who probably not gonna make the team come in, and he gives up a bomb, and it's just like, and Dodgers fans start gradually tuning out. Like, you're putting in all this hype and effort into something that's gonna last for like 45 minutes, and then it's gonna be done. Well, WBC is just like I just I always think about it as like the Spain-Taiwan game where the third baseman's having the meltdown, right? He's crying on the field. Like, you can see this means everything to him, and he just, like, his heart's breaking on the field. Like, it's something that means so much to these players and to these countries. That's something you should be showcasing. That should be your top priority, especially it's games with major league players that no one cares about the results. Like, there's no meaning behind it. It's so unserious. Players are just like, yeah, I'm just getting in my work. I gave up a grand slam, but whatever. It's all good. Like, I get you want to show that because you're still your league, but you also need to put in effort showing games that mean so much, because the Taiwan atmosphere in that game was crazy. Like, it's top of the first inning. Every strike you would think was the final pitch of the game. And so it's like, these are environments that grow baseball. Like, people are like, they want to tune in because they're seeing fans going crazy. They're seeing excitement, they're seeing energy, and it's losing February. So it's like, why are you not focusing on that? Because it is such an easy market, because you can pull in so many people from Japan, from Taiwan, and you can really grow it in a lot of places in Europe who are curious about the game, but they aren't in like high level leagues. They don't get a lot of professionals. They don't get a lot of high quality baseball to get to watch, and you kind of capture that audience, but they don't have any interest in that because it means actually have to put in work to do it. And they want, else, they want the most results with the least work, and that's something it's not changing. But I'm hopeful it will change the more it grows in interest. But I feel like at this point I'm kind of like a one-man World Baseball Classic hype man right now. I'm like, please join me.
Yeah, I mean the good part about it is like we do now live in a day and age where people like you and Sean Spradling and all the rest of them can just go off and just be like, I'm gonna do it, and it can work.
Hmm.
I mean, like you can actually drive like meaningful attention to something and not just have to sit there and be like, I wish they'd do a commercial for this. Like so that is a good thing, but it is bananas that like I know nothing about marketing and I'm sitting here being like running circles around them. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's infuriating,
yeah.
but
I mean, for me, it was something I was like, I was like, someone's got to fill this because Sean Spradling did like the World Baseball Classic stuff, but like there was no one else doing like continental qualifiers. Like I
yeah.
tweeted every single, or just about every single game of the European Championship last time. I got so many people following me, interacting with it, and it wasn't even something that I intended. It just kind of happened like that, and so I was like, "Oh, that's cool. At least some people have interest in it." And I'm like, these are just like events that are just crucial to the growth in these countries. And it was something that I wanted to do. And I mean, I've had like after I did that and what I've done recent months, like I have federations contacting me, coaches contacting me. They're just like, well, we're gonna have all these players. What do you think about this player and such and such? And I'm just like, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Actually, can I use that to ask you a question?
yeah, go ahead.
So, one of the things that fascinates me about the World Baseball Classic is like the diaspora that gets involved with a lot of teams, not everybody, but obviously Team Israel, Team Italy, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And we don't need to get off into your thoughts about the system itself. I love the system. I know a lot of people don't like it. But given that those are the rules we're working with here, who are some guys for the four teams that we just saw qualify? Who are some guys that you think people, and let's say best case scenario, I know you're going to get into, some guys won't want to, whatever. If all four of those teams have their guys, who should we be looking out for Colombia, Brazil,
Okay.
Taiwan, and who else qualified? Nicaragua.
Okay, Nicaragua, super interesting to me. Like, I've had people would probably like, oh, they're not that good. Yada. I'm like, trust me, they're fine. I think about like they had one guy, Oscar Rayo, starting pitcher, right? The Royals. This is ridiculous to me. They approved him, and then right before the tournament, we're like, no, never mind, you can't pitch now. Um,
Yeah.
but he's like a starting pitcher on this team. He could be a starting pitcher. Right? He's going to be very good. Obviously, their entire starting rotation, except for Ronald Madrano, is going to be totally different guys. So I think Oscar Reyes kind of guy pitching wise to really look out for them. Hitting wise, I think it's going to be work. Like if they don't get Mark Vientos, it's going to be a struggle. But they can pitch just about as well as anyone. Like Carlos Rodriguez, Rodney Theophile in the rotation. They have just a wealth of guys who can pitch. I mean, Fernando Perez, who's in the Blue Jays system, he's going to be a guy that I think is going to be really contribute. He should be in like high A ball this season. He's pretty good. I think, like I said, offense is going to be a struggle, but they got a couple Cubans that want to play for them. Like Michael Serrano, who's played with Trent Del Norte in the Winter League. He'll probably be on the team, honestly, because I don't think they're going to be too picky. And because even with naturalizing some guys, because they want to stay up, like that's immensely important.
Yeah.
So those are kind of some of the guys. And then Colombia, I love Colombia's team because honestly, like Michael Arroyo, this was for me probably the best hitting position prospect they've ever had. Like he's like 19 years old, had one only 19-year-old on a two that had OPS of 900 or better in high A. Like it's like crazy talented, but his defense isn't really like a strong suit, so he's kind of a little less well known, not as highly ranked because of that, but he can mash. So I would expect him to start at second for Colombia. And then they got some really interesting pitching prospects like Didier Fuentes, who's with the Braves in single A. He's probably the most talented Colombia pitcher in the entire minor league system because he just came in as a like 18, 19-year-old in single A and just absolutely dominated. Like there's games where he's given up one hit, striking out 10 or 11. Like at that level, pitchers are not that well advanced usually. So it's pretty notable that he's doing that. And then they didn't have him on the team, but Diane Frias was on the 2023 team. He should probably be their starting shortstop, I would guess. And I mean, those are probably the main guys. Obviously, Jorge Alfaro should be back. He was going to be on this team, and then Jose Quintana would have been pitching, but he signed with the Brewers, so he should be on the roster. So, I mean, I think Colombia is probably the team, I think, who has, from the qualifiers, the biggest chance of making like a big jump.
Yeah.
And like people aren't going to see a lot of major leaguers on their team, but it's a very interesting tournament because you see a lot of times minor leaguers end up looking incredible. Like Harry Ford was single A player when he played in 2023 WBC, and he's hitting homers off of professionals who've been doing it for a while. He's having good at bats against major league pitchers. So it's very much, I think minor leaguers can contribute a lot higher than people think at that level, because a lot of times major league pitchers or major league hitters just haven't seen them before. So they can get caught by surprise and be like, okay, yeah, this dude's actually a baller. So so that, and then Brazil, I think Brazil, like Bo Bichette is going to be the big name for them for sure. Like they need Bo Bichette bad because they have nobody in their system that can even come close to him. And so he would like, there might not be more pressure on one single player in the WBC than Bo Bichette, because it's just like, please save us. Like
Brazil, if I could jump in really fast, Brazil is really funny to me. I was thinking about this in the shower, and I was like, there's a lot of Brazilian American people, and so I was like, if Brazil can get all their guys, they could have Yan Gomes, Bo Bichette. The Lopes brothers are probably still young enough that they could play. Those are big leaguers. Dylan Lee. I think that's it. I was like, I don't know of anybody else. I can't think of anybody else.
When you look
Thiago Vieira, I guess. I thought he might still be hurt. I don't know.
No, he's supposed to get, I think he hasn't gotten yet, but he's supposed to get Tommy John surgery.
Okay, so he's toast, yeah.
Yeah. I know there were some Brazilians who said, watch him to play. I was just like, if you think insurance is going to cover this dude, like, yeah, no. I don't, even if he's ready to go, there's no way that insurance is going to cover someone who's been on the injured list for a year.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't think there's any way he'll play. But I think the Lopes brothers, I don't think they're going to play, because Tim Lopes is like a full-time police officer now. So I think that's kind of,
oh, really?
Yeah. And then his brother Christian, I think, is just retired. I think he's a real estate agent now. So, yeah, it's like, I mean, you could convince them, but I mean, if you go years without playing any organized baseball and then jump in and then you're facing like Paul Skeens right out of the gate, I mean, I feel like that's probably a bad idea. But
yeah, you're going to get destroyed.
I mean, they rolled out the corpse of Dante Bichette Jr. Yeah. I don't. He's played affiliate ball for a couple of years.
Fair. I mean, he tried his best. I'll give him that, but he showed that he's been out of baseball for a while, because I mean,
he sure did.
All power fastballs that were kind of eating him up for a lot of times. So I think Brazil is interesting. There's one guy, I want to say it's Norris Paulo. I'm trying to remember his name, but there's a former Cuban pitcher who defected and moved to Brazil, and his son plays in the Brazilian league. And that dude's like, he looks incredible. He's like 18. Like they could have Jose Contreras' son on the team who pitched for them in the under 18s. So I mean, they have some.
What is the connection with Jose Contreras, real fast?
Jose Contreras moved to Brazil, I think, and got residency. So he was a pitching coach for Brazil in the under 18s, and his son was pitching on the team. So, and then with Dylan Dubovic, who's going to be a first or second round pick this year, he's committed to, I'm trying to remember which school it is. I think it's a school in Florida. But he's going to probably be first or second round pick, and he's outfielder. He could probably be on the team. I watched him in the under 18 South American Championship in 2023. Shows you how far I go. He had like a 1500 OPS. Like it was insane how much more talented he was than everyone else playing, and that was with Venezuela in the tournament as well. So he looks like, for me, like a future, like highly touted prospect. So they could invite him to play. And I think they're going to need someone to step up. That's a kind of a young prospect, because they have a lot of players who, quite frankly, if they're going to face high-end pitching, it's going to be a really big struggle. I know Vinicius Dos Santos, who's a Giants prospect, could be on the team, but he kind of struggled his first year in the Dominican Summer League. So I don't really know how that's going to go. But it's So I mean, Brazil, they can send a little better team, but they definitely need Jan Gomes to like not retire and play because it's a huge drop off at catcher. So I mean, they have some interesting players, and I think Taiwan, super fun team. Like Hao Yu Lee, a prospect for the Tigers, like he might step in and be their best hitter immediately. Like for sure, looks like a major league player to me at least, and it's kind of Taiwan's never had this type of pitching that they have now. Like some of the guys they had on their qualifier team are pretty young, but have a really bright future. Like I think right now, I know they're going to be put in Tokyo. Like that's just a foregone conclusion. Because
Mhm.
I mean, I think personally they have the team that can beat Korea and Czech Republic.
Really?
Yeah, I think they're better than Korea. So
Well, Czech Republic, that wouldn't be a great surprise,
that
but
would
Korea would be a big surprise.
they're better than Korea.
But can they beat Australia is the question.
I don't think so personally. I have Australia as the second best team in the pool.
If they have Bazana and
They
Liam,
have Anna, Curtis Mead. We'll see how it translates. But they have a player in college, Brent Iredale. Huge fan of his. Like he's going to probably be a high draft pick this year, but he's probably the most powerful Australian hitter they've ever had. Like just insane power. So I think he's a name to watch to make that Australian team. But they're gonna be really fun. And Adam Bates, a Red Sox prospect, I think he's going to crack the rotation. He's going to be a guy to watch for Australia. And
I got a real quick question for you about Australia.
Yeah.
I have heard there's this guy who does MLB The Show rosters. He makes like his own like WBC rosters, and he put Ben Brown, the pitcher on the Cubs, on Team Australia. And I DM'd him and I was like, why? And he went, I saw a clip of Ben Brown talking at like Cubs Fest or something, and he mentioned that he had an Australian grandfather. And I was like, can you send me the link? And he was like, yeah, no problem. And then I don't know, just forgot or whatever, never got around to it. And I have like looked all over and scoured because I was like, that would be huge. And I can't find anything. And I asked Eric Balnar, the Australian guy, and he said he'd get back to me. So like, it's tentative, but that would be huge. Do you know anything about this?
Oh, I've never heard anything about that. I think usually if there's like someone who have some sort of heritage, like Australia will list the player on like their professional player page. So maybe they're not aware of it themselves.
Yeah, I mean that's a bit like having a grandfather from somewhere is like a big leap. Like you can't just expect that guy to play automatically, but like that'd be huge. I mean, if they get that guy, that's huge.
But I'd have to look at their like citizenship by descent rules too, because there's some places where even a grandpa, like Japan, that isn't enough.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Yeah, you need a
I
parent.
think Japan is sort of notably strict on that, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they're pretty strict. But that's the way it is for a lot of people. Like Brazil is the same way. Like you'd have to have a parent. Like I know people like have talked about like Mark Canha, who he's a fourth generation Portuguese American. I was like Portuguese, not Brazil. So why would he play for Brazil? But especially fourth generation. That's a stretching it as far as like places. Like only places that you can do that with are like, like Italy, Israel, and like
yeah,
Poland.
I was gonna say you're getting into Israel territory where like if you walk past the synagogue in the past year, they're like, dude, you want to come down and play, man? Like
actually, I a couple of years ago I interviewed the manager. He's not the manager anymore, but the manager of the Greek national team. I was writing an article about him. And he was like, yeah, if you can just show that like literally anyone is Greek, you're in. Like he's like, I've had guys who went back like 8 generations.
Oh yeah.
Give me these names of Greek. Like he was like, yeah, did you know Mitch Haniger was Greek? And I was like, how would I know that?
Yeah,
or like, Sam Huff on the Rangers is Greek. And I was like, or Andrew Lambo. And I was like, what? Like if you remember him.
Like Nick Markakis that are Greek.
Yeah, I mean that one.
Yeah, sure. Like
clearly.
George Kontos sounds Greek. Fair enough.
Yeah.
George Kataris. It sounds pretty Greek.
But when he said Mitch Haniger, I was like, why would I have known that Mitch Haniger was Greek?
It's like you're like, yeah, but like if you go back the line, it's like,
yeah,
I don't actually research Mitch Haniger's family tree, but
now see, Greece is like a China one that I wish they would put in because if they're that lax, they could put together a wild team. I would have a blast watching a Greek team.
I've actually been doing quite a bit of reading on Greece. Don't ask, but their national team. I actually feel like they're going to do really well at the Euros this year because they're recruiting a lot of like guys who are going to go drafted pretty high this year. They're getting a lot more guys interested in playing for them. So I mean, could realistically be like a top 8, top 7 team this year. So I mean, that might be able to just like get them in like an invite just like that.
If you want a funny story really fast that you didn't ask for, I hit up this
Yeah.
page. It was, I forget, GreekBaseball.com or something, and I was like, hey, I want to write this article about like different countries writing in their baseball program. And the guy messaged me back and he goes, yeah, I'm the manager of the national team, like whatever you need, whatever. So I got on a phone call with him and he was great, and gave me everything I needed, wrote an article about it. And then they switched managers. I don't know what happened. I think it was not a great like breakup. I don't know. But so I like lost my source. And now their manager is a guy named Chris Demetrol, who was like a AAA guy with the Dodgers, I think. And now you can see like the turnover of what you're talking about, of like now their coaching staff is like some guys that played in the big leagues, and they have like guys that are getting drafted and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I lost my source before they became like
Yeah, right.
That's like
yeah,
nah.
now that they're taking this seriously,
But the thing
you
that's
can't talk
hilarious
to them
was
anymore.
I had interviewed the manager and the bench coach, and I think the manager had like a bad breakup with him. Okay, fine. And the bench coach, I would still hit up, and he was like, "I'm not really involved anymore. I can't tell you anything." I was like, "Can you put me in touch with whoever's involved?" And he was like, "I'll try." And then it just kind of like fell off. And I was like,
Damn.
such a bummer. Like I would have been thrilled to like talk to, you know what I mean?
I think Greece is probably one of those up and coming teams, but it's another one of those teams that if they qualify, you can have people go, "Oh, they're not really great," and it's like, yeah, but like, I'm always just like the citizenship thing. I don't really care that much about it. I just prefer you have some sort of like heritage rather than just a whole bunch of random dudes, because to me that's like there's no real connection then. But I mean, if it's like your grandpa is from Greece or whatever, and you want to represent Greece, like I have no problem with that because I don't really see the big deal. And but I mean, you do need some homegrown players too, a little bit, just so people. It's like when people were just kind of like giving Spain the business because they had like only one player born in Spain, and,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, but the thing is like it actually represented exactly what Spanish baseball is, which is they don't have Spanish-born players really playing all that much. Like almost entire, like their youth teams, it's all virtually like Cubans and Dominicans, like kids are playing on their team. So it's really it captures baseball there kind of effectively, but it's just not convenient for most people who look at like a Venezuela or Dominican Republic, and it's just like, oh well, that's all homegrown players. And like Czechia kind of spoiled some people because the likelihood that place with limited history and tradition being able to have an effective team, that takes like decades. It's if you use some heritage players, it's not a big deal to me. I don't really take it too seriously. I mean, there's some federations who kind of almost are, I don't want to use the term, but almost whoring themselves out to players. It was like, oh, please pick us, please pick. I'm just like, okay, I don't know
get that though. Like it's a business.
Right.
Like there's prize money. You know what I mean? Like I totally get it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and you want to get that money so that you can like build out a domestic program. And like what you want to see is that teams use, let's be honest, like cast-offs from good countries to build like their domestic program, and then like, maybe you start getting homegrown players in there.
I think what people forget is like Japan. That's how baseball started. Like it was literally just like Americans going to Japan, and like how is it they were more committed to promoting the game of baseball in like the 20s and 30s than they are now?
Yeah,
like,
they were sending like Babe Ruth around the world.
Yeah. Imagine like if they just sent Aaron Judge, hey, we're gonna go have you play in just like this random Asian country, and it's gonna be in like the middle of your off season, but you're just going to just promote it and get people excited about it. He'd just be like, what the fuck? No. Like,
dude, and what's weird is Japan does this now.
Yeah.
Like half the people we've talked to who are involved with like domestic programs, whenever they're like, yeah, we got coaches come out, it's always Japanese guys. It's never Americans. It's never.
They hold a Japanese Koshien tournament, which is a high school tournament. They host it in Uganda.
Right, yeah.
Like
it's always the Japanese. It's wild.
But if Major League Baseball is like, hey, you should invest in this random country because baseball could be huge there. It's just like, oh, you're twisting my arm. Like,
yeah.
Hear that? Like,
we need to throw more money at China again.
It's like, well, are we going to be able to exploit like 14-year-olds for this? Oh, no? Well, we're not interested then, like, obviously.
Right.
All right, so I've put together like a qualification format for the World Baseball Classic, like what it would look like if they did like a continental qualification format. and it's with every single national team that has played in a sanctioned international tournament in the 21st century.
Okay.
So, like, it came out, I think, to like 125 countries.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can go pretty deep in the vault.
So wait,
And
does this include like rosters and stuff, or is this
oh
just
no, it didn't include rosters. I mean, I can do rosters. That's not
okay?
a
Because
problem.
I was sitting there and I was like, how do you find players for Team Iceland?
But
Yeah.
uh, I'm obviously there is an Iceland minor league player, so that would be the only one that I
I
for
really
sure.
like that you said obviously.
Yeah. What, you mean you didn't know that?
Right. But it's yeah, I think I mean I'm pretty sure I can do it because like I can go into like one of the things is like finding like European teams in like from like the late to like mid 2010s is actually shockingly hard. But it's like when they switched over from like the ABAF to the WBSC, it's like all of a sudden they're just like, yeah, all this stuff is just like it just doesn't exist anymore. So you kind of go on like bleacher, not bleacher, but baseball reference, bullpen, and they have like all these scores and stats and rosters from like tournaments going back like the 60s and 50s. I was just like, whoever did this is an absolute sicko, and I love it.
Mhm. Yeah, because they were tracking all that down and compiling it before the internet was a thing. Yeah.
I've gone back because I'm very big into like historical context and kind of like framing national teams. So like if you're not familiar with their history, like I look at like Venezuela is one that like I've done where they've never won like a senior like global baseball tournament ever in their history. So I'm looking at like all the way back to the 40s and they're like the amateur World Series and
Mhm.
tracking to make sure it's right. So I'm just like, if you just start giving me rosters from all the way back here too, I'm sad. This is good. Like it's so I mean I did it like a whole qualification period. It was just like I did all these pre-qualifiers like with Africa and Oceania, and I'm looking up like prior tournaments that Togo is in and and like the which we call the Palau. I'm just like, oh, this is so Solomon Islands, right? I'm like, this is great. Like, and that's the thing is like, I feel like if I actually had the thought, I was like, what if you held like qualifiers over a 2 week period, but you played them all at the same time? That you all played them in November, like at the same exact time, where you can have minor league players, major league players, and it's like a 24-hour period of like constant baseball and qualification periods going on. I'm like, why has no one thought about this before? Because this sounds like it'd be amazing. And B, it's just like I feel like you would just like it would just like really match up well with like the sicko brain of being like, yeah, I'm watching these random teams in Oceania playing that are just terrible, but it's just like imagine it's like Solomon Islands just has to play like New Zealand and gets beat like 25-1. Be like, I feel like I'd be in heaven. Like this is great.
Yeah,
like,
I'm watching Team Ukraine play Team Cameroon, and you know what? This is looking like a tough matchup for Team
right?
Ukraine. I think Cameroon's got them.
You are my kind of sicko, Jeff. This is amazing.
Yeah. It's like one of those things that like you don't really share on a platform because it's just like I feel like the amount of people that would share that it's very small, but
Yeah, vanishingly small.
yes,
Yeah.
it would be like they'd be like, okay, yeah, you like this is an illness, okay, you need this.
Yeah.
But I'm just like
People are backing away. They're like, okay.
I'm just like I was like, I would pitch this idea to Major League Baseball in a heartbeat. I'd be like, okay, I know you guys suck at this, but here's what you can do to be better. And it's just like creating like a March Madness style thing. And like, imagine if you had like a red zone channel, but for international baseball that takes all these different games that are happening at the same time. It's just like, I feel like this is just like, it's like a gold mine waiting to happen, but they'll never do it because it's just like, oh, but like, then people might actually like be more interested in baseball. We don't want that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might have to spend like $10,000 a team to get them there, and you know the MLB, they're really tight on money right now.
right? It's just like we just had our most profitable year ever again. But but if we spend more money, then one of our owners might not be able to get his eighth yacht, so it might cause a kind of controversy.
Oh,
We don't want.
oh,
It's it's hilarious. And Trevor May, I saw, just pitched this idea of, nobody cares about the All-Star game really in any sport anymore. And they're all lame and nobody watches.
even
And
the players are not
yeah, the
playing under
players
the
don't care.
pretense that anyone cares.
And hockey just did it right, where they did the Four Nations thing, and it was great, and people loved it. And
Mm.
we should do that with baseball. You don't quite have four nations that are all on the same page, but you could do like the US and Japan and then like
Well,
Oceania and
I,
then
I've had the thought, let's just do the World Baseball Classic in July, and you start the season a week earlier. You end the season a week later. You cut out the All Star break. Boom, that's your World Baseball Classic right
I'd
there.
be here for it. I
Yeah,
would
Yeah.
that's just and then we know Japan would stop their season to have this. They do it for the
Without even a second thought.
Yeah,
And they would be like, yes,
they would stop
absolutely.
it. KBO would stop it. Mexico would stop their season. All these countries stop their season. It wouldn't be a problem, and it would be like the All Star game, which it just had, I want to say, record low viewership, and it's just kind of just wasting everybody's time, and
Right. Yeah.
it doesn't have the same appeal because it's just players aren't really judged on all-star appearances. I don't feel like anymore. It's just kind of whatever. Players are just well, did you win MVP, Silver Slugger, stuff that you get awarded for the regular season at the end of the season.
But you could also still name an all-star team. Like that's
Yeah.
fine. You can still do the same. They have voting and everything and just not play the game. Nobody cares.
Kind of like NBA does with all NBA selection, right?
Yeah. Perfect.
So you just do that, and then you're in the middle of the season, especially think about July. I've had the thought of especially in the US, start the tournament, US playing July 4th, game 1. That's the first day of the tournament. You got no other sports really going on at all. And you could really expand the tournament and really kind of capture a more global audience, even more so than now.
Mhm.
And and it's kind of one of those things where it would just create an explosion of interest. And there's not, I just don't really see a real reason, because you're not having to alter really much of your season to do it. You're just changing the start and end date, but not drastically. And,
Right.
and also, how many more stadiums could you play in then? You don't have to be in a dome anymore. You can be any ballpark in North America, and you can have people there. You could host if at some point down the road, not yet, but host in Europe. They get to host a pool in Europe because if the weather's good at that time of the year. So it just opens up so many more possibilities, and you don't have to have pitchers doing the whole, spring, I'm not ready, yada yada yada.
Right.
So
Although I do suspect you would hear different excuses from the same guys. It'd be like,
there's some
I'm
guys,
having a good year. So,
right?
I guess Merrill Kelly's going to have to be the ace again.
Yeah. But I just feel like it's like in July, it's the perfect time. You're not competing with as many sports, and Japan's always gonna tune in. That's just when it's just funny. People in Japan were waking up to watch games in the qualifiers in Tucson, middle of the night. Watch. I was like, Japan's just it's different.
Japan's the best. I love Japanese baseball fans.
But it's when you watch, I was actually watching a WBC game from 2009 earlier, and where they were saying Japan was 30,000 people were showing up to watch them scrimmage before the WBC. I was just like, that's basically you would never see that in the US. A scrimmage.
No.
The team is just packed stadium. They would just be you
couldn't even get the team to take that seriously.
Yeah. It's
be like, well, okay, so we're not bringing any of our good pitchers, and we're not going to play hard, and we're going to win 2-1 against some team that stinks. We're going to win 2-1 against New Guinea.
Yeah. Whatever. And I think it's just, for me, one of the things that really has never made sense to me is how many baseball fans cling to spring training. They're just this is an event. I don't want the players going to World Baseball Classic. I was like, for spring training, you're this focused on spring training. Like it
Spring
is like,
training is weird that it's like mythical in baseball for some. And if you go to spring training, I'm sure it's really cool. I have nothing against that. That's perfectly fine.
yeah,
But nobody cares about the preseason in any other sport. Like preseason football games, people think are stupid and they want it over with. You know, this want the real thing. But for some reason, people hang on to this idea of like pitchers and catchers report in 2 weeks, and then you finally see it, and it's just a bunch of guys like tossing the ball around. And then
right.
spring training games start, and like nobody takes it seriously. Half the lineup scrubs you don't care about, and like not that there's anything wrong with that. I was sitting here the other day working on something on the computer, and I put on a Philly spring training game. Like that is better than zero baseball. I will take it. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exciting. I don't need to stop anything to put it on. I don't actually care who wins. Like, there's nothing super cool about spring training. It's just like, oh, this is like the kind of baseball before the real baseball.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like when people are like, oh, 2 weeks till baseball's back. And I was like, 2 weeks until a bunch of grown men are just softly tossing the ball back and forth and talking about how much muscle they put on over the off season. I
Yeah.
was like, I don't
Everybody
know,
in the best shape of their life.
right?
You never want to hear that from a player. Like he's coming into spring in the best shape of his life. It's like, oh man,
That's when one
he's getting
player,
cut.
I didn't take my off season seriously. I gained a lot of weight, and now I'm trying to lose it right before the start of the season. I just kind of came here, Abe.
Dodgers Andrew Jones. He's your guy.
Oh yeah,
When Andrew Jones reported to his first Dodgers camp, he showed up all fat, and they were like, "Dude, what happened?" And he's like, "I don't know, man. I signed a big contract. What do you want from me?"
There's nothing more annoying to me than people like I don't know what MLB team you're a fan of, but we're Phillies fans.
please. I don't want to get into it.
Are you a Mariners fan? I want to say. Yes,
Mariners guy for you.
Mariners guy for, but we're Phillies fans, and before 2023, the Phillies had like one open roster spot left, and I don't remember who the candidates were, but one of the candidates was Jake Cave. Right?
Oh,
I'm sure you're familiar with Jay Cave. Absolute scrub. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm not trying to make fun of him. He just is not a very good baseball player.
Hey,
And he went
KBO
in there-
legend JK.
Yeah, he went in there and put up like a 1200 OPS in the spring or something, and he was just a lock. And literally, like any Phillies podcast you listen to or something, it'd be like, well, that spot's got to go to Jay Cave when you watch him tear up spring training. Since when does spring training mean anything? Like what? Like you know when spring training means something when you go, oh, he looks hurt, like that sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like spring training is like, are you able to carry out baseball acts the way that you're supposed to?
Players. I don't know. Like they're swindlers. What they are. Okay. Spring training is when you swindle a franchise into giving you a spot because. Like you see players who just come in and like people are like, oh, he's facing mostly starters and putting up great numbers. I was like, those starters, their breaking ball is garbage.
They're working on stuff
until like the final week of March. Like they
will like intentionally go out there and they'll be like, okay, listen,
I don't know if you guys
they'll be like, your changeup was your worst pitch last year. I want you to go out there and throw a lot of changeups because you got to iron this out. And he goes out there and gives up 5 homers. And they're like, all right, well, keep in mind this is spring training. It doesn't matter.
Like I know, like I think you guys are following like Cat Caglianone in spring. Like I just run one of the worst sliders I've ever seen in my life. Like just awful slider. I was just he hits it out and they're like, oh my god, this guy's a future star. I mean, he might be, but I don't think like a guy hitting a bunch of really awful pitches out where a pitcher is not a Major League Baseball caliber pitcher, or B, his off-speed stuff in like mid-March is nowhere close to being where he needs it to be. It's not even mid-March really yet, but it's not even where it needs to be, and hits it out. And then all of a sudden minor league season starts. Like this guy should be in the majors. Starts the season, like hits like 150 in April. It's just like, oh, well, never mind. Like when there's like Yankee fans that want George Lombard to start in the MLB, I'm like, are you insane? Like no.
Yeah, I think a lot of those guys who like win a roster spot in spring training, the impression I get is that it sort of doesn't matter who gets it. Because like if it did, they would have, gone out and addressed it in this offseason, depending on the franchise, okay? Because if it's the White Sox, if it's the White Sox or the Mariners and they need a bat, they're going to go out there and not get one. Right. But, like like the Jake Cave thing. It's like, yeah, dude, listen, we dedicated an entire podcast to trashing Jake Cave. I don't know that the Phillies were super invested in who won that spot. I think they were just like, all right, listen, we need a warm body to come out of here, and we're not going out there and signing like Tyler O'Neill.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, clearly the Jake Cave experiment did not work out very well for the Phillies. So
Now he's going to be a KBO legend.
Like, I just
yeah,
ask the people who just like, when we're just like going over like sabermetrics stats for spring training, like, I get it, you're really into it, but like, does an intervention need to take place? Like,
now, I do have to be fair here. Wouldn't someone look at you going, "Well, I got Iceland playing Denmark," and
yeah, I'm not publicizing it. That's the thing.
that's a good point. Until now,
I recognize that you have to be a sicko to do this, so I don't like make it well known on my page that I'm a complete sicko to that regard. But
you should, man. You got to let your freak flag fly.
Yeah, I'm with Tom.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, it's just like I'm seeing like just like especially like this like wholly small sample size theater, like it's insane. Like we're talking 7 plate appearances. I'm just like, like that's 2 games in the regular season. Like at some point you got to be like, am I maybe overreacting just a little bit? And then it's just like, it's kind of like you're setting yourself up for massive disappointment when the season starts and they're struggling. It's just like, wow, did I overreact? That couldn't have been it. They must have just done something different.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think the main appeal for spring training, at least for me, is like, I don't really super care about any of the other sports that much. So like, I just spend the winter just being like, I'm ready for baseball to come back. And like, even if it doesn't really matter, like, I'm like, at least it's baseball and not like, me just desperately trying to enjoy football,
Yeah.
Like me sitting there being like, oh, wow, what do you know? The Chiefs are in the Super Bowl again.
I actually know exactly how you're feeling. I put on a football game and I enjoy watching football. Like, I think it's like entertaining, but I sit there and I like want it to matter to me more than it does.
I used to be like really big football fan when I was younger, and a basketball fan. And then I just like, as I get older, I'm just like, not gonna lie, this shit kind of sucks. Like, I'm just like, I'm watching football, and I'm just like, how is this game still going on? Like, it's not like baseball where you just feel the tension and there's matchups and there's big moments. I was like, literally 80% of a football game, utterly meaningless.
If I can go on a rant for 1 second, this bothers me to no end. And I spent the first like 10 years of my life being like an enormous football fan. Like football was my baseball until I was in like 5th grade. And I still really like football. Like I enjoy it. I still watch it. There is nothing more annoying to me about anything in the world than the victory formation of football, like taking a knee. It is the stupidest thing in the world that you can just decide, I win. That's it. We're not playing football anymore. It's bananas to me that you can hold a lead and there's still time left on the clock and you can just go, you don't get to play anymore. The game is now over. It's crazy. And I remember I was having this argument with somebody and they're like, well, it's to prevent injuries. Okay, that's fine. You still should have to play football until the clock hits 0. Like if there's 45 seconds left, you should still have to run it. I understand there's a 99.9% chance they're just going to tackle you and the game's going to be over anyway, but they could like force a fumble or something. You can't just decide the game is over. That would be like if I had a lead in the 8th inning and got 1 out and we're just like, I don't want to pitch anymore. Game's over.
Yeah. All right, you know what? I'm doing the victory.
It's crazy.
Ball. I think this is something. It's related to what you're saying. So I get what you're saying with that. But is football the only sport where being scared of making mistakes is praised? Like you think of other sports, they're like, we're playing scared. We're not aggressive. We're not playing to win. In football, they literally scream at a coach if he doesn't play not to lose. Like, oh, well, this could go wrong. He's throwing the ball deep, but we should be running it all the time because, well, what if we have a turnover? We're going for it on 4th and 1. What are we doing? We should punt.
That's a good point. The other, yeah, because football, like, it's set up in a way where you can minimize the risk to yourself.
Yeah.
So, like, you could air it out on 4th and 12 and maybe get an awesome first down, but you're probably not. So let's make it harder on them and give them the ball back.
In inches. There's broadcasters who'll be like, I just don't understand why they're not kicking here. It's just like I'm just like they have no courage. Like
Yeah,
it's
it's
the
a
only
good
sport.
question.
Like, could you imagine a basketball game where they were just like, okay, you need to just like hold for a shot clock violation because if it's a live ball turnover, they might come down and score. But if you miss it, you may not have your defense set and they come down and score. So let's just take the shot clock violation and play defense with it set. Like it would make no sense. You'd be like, okay, do you have like no spine at all? Like there's no courage. Like, and that's in football. It's just like they just encourage coaches. It's like when they remember when like Ron Rivera was the riverboat gambler for
Riverboat Ron.
4th and 8 inches. I was like, oh no, like this guy is so scary. He's lying in his 6'5", like 200.
You never know what he's gonna do.
I was like, he's the riverboat gambler. Like it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like
Yeah.
and if you're a coach who goes for it a lot and forth, and the occasional time you don't get it, fans are just like panicking, like
You
just,
get crucified.
right? It's like
That's a really interesting. I never thought about it that way, but that is a really interesting viewpoint. It makes perfect sense now that you say it. I think it's just a
Mhm.
flaw in the way the game's designed.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Can I switch sports on you real fast for the last topic because I got to go pretty soon? But you brought up that you're a big international baseball fan, and I feel like I understand the WBC people compare to the FIFA World Cup. It's never going to be the FIFA World Cup, right? It's just never going to get to that level. Yeah, it's never, and I would love it to be, but it's just not realistic. I feel like the FIBA World Cup, the basketball World Cup, is like the 99th percentile outcome for the WBC. Like if everything hits right,
I think
that's what we want it to be.
WBC is better than the FIBA Basketball World Cup for one big reason: insanely more competitive. Like the talent gap is not as stark. Like if the U.S. sends its best roster, there's no chance they're going to lose. Like even if the other, like look at the last Olympics, like Serbia, insane performance, still couldn't win, and that's unsustainable shooting and everything going right. They couldn't win. In baseball, the U.S. can send their best roster possible and still lose if they face an ace pitcher who's got like another one backing him up on the other side, and the other team gets a couple bloopers fall. And that's what made baseball special. Is you don't need and you don't need to have the most talent. Like I said earlier, like Puerto Rico, they are the smallest country to play for like a World Cup style championship. Like no other, like in soccer, never happens. Croatia, I think, is the smallest, and before then, it was like Uruguay in like 1953. So it's like it favors like sports like that in basketball. It favors just collecting the most talent. So if you have more players, if you have a bigger pool to pick from, you're gonna have more success just because it's so talent based. It's not based so much on pure skill and pure just kind of luck. And
But
I think
that's one of the things that I admire about the FIBA World Cup is that like one they've already gotten the message that it's 32 teams or something. I think it's a lot of teams.
yeah,
And everybody's competitive, and they have a bunch of tournaments before that to determine the 32 teams. And what I also like about it is that everybody has to qualify. Like the U.S. has to qualify. They're going to. It's not a problem, but they have to. So like if Jordan came in and for whatever reason just like rocked the U.S. somehow, they would get the spot. Like I think that's kind of cool. Is that it's qualify, but also like they get stars pretty much. Not every, I think Giannis was hurt and he didn't play, but like everybody's playing for their team. Like Luca played, you know what I mean? Like everybody's playing for their team. Like Australia had like literally every good player that they had, you know what I mean?
yeah.
They're doing it right. And so I view it and I'm like 20 years from now, whatever, if everything can hit, that's what I want the World Baseball Classic to.
I think early signs are baseball is going towards that because the Copa America this year is supposed to be a qualifier for the Olympics and for the World Baseball Classic. And they're supposed to announce that soon, but I don't know the exact format, like on what the qualification is going to look like. But I think they're going to eventually go to like a FIBA World Cup style qualification. It's just they don't want to host the qualifiers. They want the WBSC to host them so they get all of the benefits, but they don't have to spend the money.
Yep.
So I think that's kind of the way it's going. But I've always I watched the qualifiers for the FIBA World Cup. I think it's great. I think it's just they just don't get NBA players for so much of them, and that's probably the biggest issue that like baseball has is you want to get MLB players playing in these events.
Definitely.
You know,
Hmm.
like I think like just imagine I look at like countries who don't have that great like Puerto Rico and Panama actually support the national team well, but the club teams they don't support as much. That's a lot harder for them to build interest. And they don't get to host a lot of home games, right? Like Panama's
Hmm.
never hosted World Baseball Classic, like official game, just the qualifiers. Dominican Republic never hosted anything World Baseball Classic. They could like host in their stadiums, be able to see their national team more, you would see so much more interest in the
Hmm.
team. Like just imagine like Dominican Republic against Puerto Rico in Santo Domingo for a qualifier spot in the World Baseball Classic. A crazy atmosphere. And it's like, why are you not trying to take advantage of this? Like it's you're printing money. Like you don't even have to
Hmm.
do any promotion. The fans will just do it all for you. Like
Yeah.
so I would love if they did a FIBA World Cup style qualification period. You already know I'm watching every game. Like, so it's like I like Uganda, South Africa. I'm like, I'm in there. Just tell me the time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Is there Jeff, is there anything we didn't get to, or Tom, that you guys wanted to talk about?
Oh, I mean, I guess I'm gonna probably do something related to this on my channel. But do you guys have like a team like in the World Baseball Classic that you're really looking forward to watching outside of like team you'd root for, or do you think it's like a dark horse to like make a run?
Um, I
We got
always,
our personal little pet teams, you know.
yeah, I always love Team Australia. For some reason, I think Australia is like the coolest place in the world. And for a
Mm.
while, I liked them, and I thought they were fun, and they would go out there and just get spanked. And now, like against Korea, they were like super exciting, and I think they're gonna be better this time. So
Yeah,
I think they should. It'll depend on what the pools. I don't remember off the top of my head what the pools look like. It's Korea, Japan, Australia, a qualifier team,
in
and
Czech
so,
Republic.
the Czechs back. Okay,
Yeah,
I can see him
and
getting
my
out.
pet team, the Czech Republic.
Yeah, I could see him getting out of there, getting into the qualifier, and they like almost beat Cuba. Like they could have, you know what I mean? So I could see
Yeah,
him
for
making it.
sure. They keep matching
Aus-
Cuba too. It's like poor guys. You know, just
Mhm.
you're gonna get over that.
Australia actually is like, I think they're officially out of the irrelevant tier of teams on the world stage,
Yeah,
probably to stay.
Yeah, they're
yeah,
like a
Which,
Columbia level team. Like they're like not they're
yeah,
not gonna win the whole thing. They're probably not going to make it to the the final four, but
yeah.
they're good. They're good.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like if they make the quarterfinals, more than likely they're staring at Dominican Republic or Venezuela. I'm probably not going to win,
Right.
but
right.
it would be great exposure for them just as a baseball country, just
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
you would have people from Venezuela or Dominican Republic who would never watch Australia typically watch
Hmm.
Australia, and you get it's kind of a nice measuring stick. I think for me, for sure, I'm like I really love Canada and the WBC. Like I'm just
That's
like
unfortunate.
tires, man. I was like, I really think that they got a chance to like. I think if they get all their pitchers, I think they can go to the semifinals. Like I think if they can get Mexico potentially in like a quarterfinal, I think they could beat Mexico in a quarterfinal. It'd be really close,
Yeah.
but
Well,
they
then Mexico looked really good in the last tournament. Mexico looked like they were reborn
I
the
think
last time around.
was going to have like almost an entirely different starting lineup this time, just because they have a lot of young guys who are really coming into their own now, and they
Hmm.
kind of have like the Alex Verdugos that kind of like kind of
Stink.
in decline and not really guys
Mm.
that they really have to use anymore. Same
Right,
with
yeah.
Rowdy Tellez and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
Joey Meneses.
Yeah.
so I think it's gonna be pretty good. But I mean, Canada for me is just like it's insane how much pitching they have now. Like it's not like before where they have their like three or four main starters that don't play. Like they're fucked. Like now
Right, yeah.
up depth and they just have insane bullpen. Like Cade Smith, it's like being like your eighth inning guy. Matt Brash is your ninth inning guy. I'm trying to think of the other guy that was on the Guardians
They,
bullpen.
they could try to woo Romano. I mean, I know he's got ties to Italy, but that's another
Yeah,
option.
Romano's
Hmm.
kind of like in decline though a little bit. I'm not sure he's going to bounce back. His stuff has kind of gone down.
Oh, don't say that. Don't
Yeah,
say
stop
that.
it. Stop
We
it. The
need him to
Phillies
be
signed.
good this year.
I forgot you.
What I really want out of life is for some really good player to go down to the Australian Baseball League and meet some girl and marry her and just be a ringer. Like I want like Aaron Judge or something to go down there, meet some nice Australian girl, and just be like, you know what? Let's do it, and just
Yeah,
carry.
Bobby Witt becomes the
Yeah,
starting shortstop for Team Australia.
yeah, exactly.
it's but honestly for this tournament, like I'm almost afraid like what's gonna happen if Korea doesn't do well. Like I don't think they will, because they honestly might like have like a summit. Like we got everything that's wrong, because it's kind of like there's some people who like talk to me on like social media, and they'll be like Korea doesn't need like such and such major league players.
You
Like
don't need Tommy Edman.
I'm just like, do you really believe that? Like, or you just
Yeah. Did
like
you see them like step on a rake against Australia last time? Like they do need some help, man. They didn't look great in that game.
right? It was like Australia. Only other team that scored A+ runs against was China. Like, so I mean, I like Australia, but like that wasn't like an elite offense. So I mean, it's I'd be pretty concerned. It's just like, oh, Dane Dunning was like, he has like a 4 something ERA. I like this guy in the KV. I'm like, yeah, the guy throws 90 miles per hour. Okay, good luck.
Yeah.
Right,
Like,
yeah, on the world stage against teams that stink, like, yeah, 90, you might be able to blow them away, but like the second you get anybody who's affiliated, 90 isn't really going to impress them. Like,
right?
90 isn't even that good of a fastball in college anymore.
No, there's guys pumping upper 90s, 100 in college now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, 90 will play it like a D3,
that's why like I talked about like Taiwan, why I like them over Korea, is because like Taiwan has like 5 starters who can throw 95 plus, and
Mm.
like if you're Korean, like you have like one. I think that's just like it's hard to match up against in an environment like that. And then it's just like, and I also feel like Taiwan has improved so much. People would be like, "Oh, this is a massive upset." I'm like, not really. They're more
Yeah,
talented.
yeah. People like
Mhm.
the reputations kind of stick around longer than they
But
actually.
like last tournament, I remember like I had I really just started like my channel, right? I actually had another one then, but it's I was like Netherlands. I don't see it personally that they're going to advance. I'm not a believer in this team at all. And people were like saying they were like a surefire bet to advance. I was like, have you seen this?
Right.
Am I taking crazy pills? Like this roster, like they're not like these are not. It's not 2017 anymore. Like they have a lot of who are well past their prime, and then Italy just absolutely crushes them in the final game, and then right before that, like Taiwan handled them pretty easily. And it's just like people were like, "Oh, this is a shock." I was like, "Is it? Is it a
Yeah.
shock?"
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Jeff, we gotta wrap it up, but this has been awesome. Can you go ahead and plug whatever you got going on, let people know where to find you?
Just follow me on mostly just on Twitter. I'm not gonna call it X. That's ridiculous. Just call me International Baseball 24. So INTL Baseball 24. And if you like international baseball, yeah, I'm pretty much, I feel like my channel is a good place to go because I talk about it daily, basically. So, you ever are a sicko and looking to talk international baseball, I'm always down.
Perfect.
All right.
Sounds good. This has been
Sounds
awesome,
good.
man. Let's do it again because there's so much stuff I didn't bring up that I wanted to. But this has been a
Okay.
blast.
All right, sounds good. Let's do it again
Thanks
soon.
a lot, man. These have been
All
great.
right.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right. Talk to you later, Jeff.
All right.